This is my childhood Daisy 177 caliber BB gun, and no, this is not a Red Ryder. Red Ryders are for tourists. The real cool kids in 1988 had a Daisy, and I've attempted to restore this over the years. I think when I was in high school was the last time where I spray painted it black and used some cheap walnut dye on the stock. But this time, I have a little bit more skill, I have a little bit more time, I have a little bit more money, so I'm going to do it right. And first thing first was stripping this paint off. So I used that aircraft grade paint remover, and that stuff is some pretty nasty stuff. Make sure you use a respirator if you try it, but it works really, really well. You can see that the paint literally just melts off. I made sure to do an exceptional job cleaning it up. I didn't want any of that residue left on there. Then got out some steel wool and just cleaned it up the best I could. Even, I believe, some 1500 grit sandpaper there. And since I'm a woodworker, I have some really, really nice offcuts, and usually it's pretty small though. So what I did was I found a graft piece, and if you don't know, they graft black walnut trees to English walnut trees, and it makes a really cool transition right where that tree grows together. So I'm going to use an incredible chunk of that English walnut, black walnut graft, and I'm just going to mimic this existing Daisy stock. At least that's the plan. I've never tried to build a gun stock before, and here's the first step I did, was just copying a template out of plywood, and that's going to give a nice even surface for this English walnut to write against. I got the rough shape of the stock cut pretty close with the bandsaw, then I went over to get as close to an exact copy as I could on my router table, and since I can only cut two-dimensionally here, it's not going to be an exact copy. I'm going to have to do a good bit of hand shaping and using some tricks like my router for the round over, and this is the foregrip, which was a little bit easier, although there were some tricky parts for this as well. Having the original stock was very helpful because I could use that as a reference for choosing the perfect radius, which I believe was a 3/4 inch round over that I'm using here. Had to be a little careful that I didn't tip this over though, because it was a little bit unstable. In the end though, it was starting to look pretty good. It actually kind of looked like a gun stock, and got the rasps out for a little bit of hand shaping. If I was a real gun maker, this would probably be a lot better, but so far, yeah, I think that will actually fit. The sanding on this piece really wasn't too bad at all. I wanted to maintain a natural wood feel, but also get a nice luster, so I sanded it up to 400 grit. Did the same thing with this foregrip as well. The next part, however, is where things got a little interesting, because I am not a metal worker, and for some reason, I decided I must have a custom Damascus billet lever, and this was one of those projects that you really don't think you're going to finish. You think, I'm going to start it, realize it's a bad idea, and then not continue with it, but somehow, some way, I actually got this to work with my limited skills and my limited metal tools. And all I really did was just copy the shape the best I could, drilled one hole, which was kind of nice that there wasn't a lot of precise mounting. And I guess in the end, you realize that there isn't a ton of precision in these old Daisies, so that probably worked to my advantage. If you can't tell by the fist pump, I was pretty excited there. I didn't really think this would work, but somehow it did. Now I just had to make it actually look good. So went about cutting out that inside portion the only way I knew how, with a series of cutoff wheels and some die grinder, and then also just a lot of elbow grease with my hand files and a little bit of Dremel work. And this was, again, one of those things I didn't think it was going to look as good as it did. And in the end, it somehow turned out pretty amazing. Now the easy part, I know how to finish wood, and this was Osmo, which isn't the most durable finish, but it can leave a really, really beautiful finish, which is what I wanted on this English walnut graft piece. Instead of spray paint, I wanted to try something else that I'd never tried before, and that was gun bluing, or this bluing solution, and I watched a couple of YouTube videos on it so I could get the hang of it, and it really was pretty cool. You can see just how quick that gun bluing reacts, and this is a rust inhibitor. It's not going to be really a rust proofer, but for me, it just made the gun look really cool, and there's a few steps to it, and definitely don't follow my advice on it because I've only done it this one time. But you basically apply it, rinse it off, and then you buff it with light steel wool, and it's that easy. It's really pretty cool. The lever, however, was going to be a different process altogether. I got it nice and polished up, and I now needed to bring that etch back. So I used muriatic acid, and that's a knife maker trick. These are all things I learned online. There's nothing original about this build, but that muriatic acid did bring the etch back up, and this was one other trick that I'd heard of people using before. I was a little skeptical, but it's just concentrated coffee. They said this will really soak in and highlight that etch as well, and in the end, I would say, yeah, I think it did. Now I needed to see if I could actually get this all together and make it actually work, because this isn't a trailer queen. This is going to be a daily driver. This is my go-to BB gun for all of my daily BB gun needs. I did get some new screws and actually did that same gun bluing trick on the screws as well, so they would match. Use the factory end piece there, and here is how it looks. I'm pretty excited about it. It was probably about a $500 investment into a $20 gun, but it does look pretty cool and it was a fun project. And let's see if it actually works though.